In the intricate ecosystem of modern fame, where public perception is the ultimate currency, there exists a powerful and merciless predator, the comedy industry. Comedians, satirists, and late-night hosts function as the immune system of the body politic, identifying and attacking what they perceive as cultural pathogens, hypocrisy, pretension, and narrative fraud. Few public figures in recent memory have triggered a more comprehensive, sustained, and creatively vicious immune response than Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. By 2025, this response had crystallized into a unified cultural narrative, one that transformed her from a divisive figure into comedy's pipata of choice, a symbol of inauthenticity so potent she was dubbed the most hated person of the year. This transformation was not accidental nor the work of a lone critic. It was the result of a cascading, industry-wide demolition, a case study in how comedy, when unified by a common target, can reshape public perception with the force of a geologic shift. The journey from Suits actress to royal bride to global punchline reveals the brutal mechanics of modern reputation management, where the court of public opinion is presided over by jokers and jesters garb, and their laughter echoes with the sound of a narrative being dismantled brick by satirical brick. The foundation of this comedic edifice was not built on petty malice, but on a perceived fracture in the basic contract of believability. The catalyst was the seismic 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview, where Meghan presented herself as an innocent trapped in a gilded cage, blindsided by archaic institutional racism and a stunning lack of support. While the interview sparked global debates on race and mental health, it also planted a seed of skepticism in the minds of professional observers of human nature. Comedians. Their craft is built on detecting incongruity, and Meghan's portrayal offered a rich vein of it. The initial comedic response was tentative, but the dam truly burst with the intervention of Chris Rock in a 2023 stand-up special. Rock bypassed the emotionally charged political discourse and went straight for the structural flaw in Meghan's story. His now legendary quip, "It's the royal family. You didn't Google these people?" was a masterpiece of rhetorical efficiency. This question was not a joke in the traditional sense. It was an intellectual predicate for all future mockery, by framing her alleged surprise as a failure of basic, modern due diligence. Rock reframed the entire conversation from one of victimhood to one of credibility. He transformed the narrative from "how could they do this" to her, to "how could she not have known?" In doing so, he performed a critical cultural service. He gave mainstream permission to question the narrative. He demonstrated that skepticism was not cruelty but logic, and that an audience would reward such clarity with laughter and agreement. Chris Rock didn't just mock Meghan. He unlocked the door. He proved the target was viable, and in doing so, he issued a silent invitation to every comic with a pen and a platform to enter the fray. American late-night television, a barometer of middle-class liberal sentiment, accepted the invitation with alacrity. The tone shifted from cautious curiosity to open season. The jokes evolved from light teasing about transatlantic accents to substantive critiques of the Sussexes' core contradictions. NBC's parody development of a sitcom called H&M was a meta-satire that cut deep. By fictionalizing their life as a comedy about a lawyer married to an unemployed royal, the network highlighted the inherent absurdity the public sensed their reality had become indistinguishable from a poorly conceived TV plot. Joe Coy, hosting the Golden Globes, wielded a sharper, more comparative blade, his bit mocking a show about a dysfunctional family all scheming, then correcting himself with "oh no, that's the crown," was devastating. It placed the Sussexes' real-life drama in the unflattering shadow of a prestigious fictional account, implicitly stating that their own story lacked the gravity, sophistication, or entertainment value of the Netflix drama that preceded them. He then spotlighted the financial absurdity at the heart of their new enterprise, the multi-million-dollar Netflix deal for content that remained a vague, nebulous promise. "They'll still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing," Coy joked, giving voice to a pervasive public resentment toward the celebrity industrial complex and its rewards for mere existence. Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon, from their respective desks, deconstructed the Sussex paradox with the precision of comic surgeons. Kimmel relentlessly attacked the central, glaring contradiction, the performative quest for privacy conducted via a global media blitz. He eviscerated Harry's memoir, Spare, not by critiquing its contents, but by framing it as the physical embodiment of hypocrisy, a 600-page, profit-generating monument to the desire for a quieter life. Fallon, the master of affable mockery, focused on the content of their post-royal brand by isolating moments of stunning banality from their Netflix series, such as Meghan carefully transferring pretzels from a commercial bag into a glass jar. and presenting them as profound lifestyle revelations. Fallon highlighted the breathtaking disconnect between their projected wisdom and the mundanity of their actual output. These segments were not just jokes, they were cultural translations. They took the public's enchote feeling of this doesn't add up and translated it into a clear, shareable, and laugh-inducing language. Perhaps the most significant and damaging pivot came from a former defender, Trevor Noah. On The Daily Show, Noah had initially been one of the most prominent voices contextualizing Meghan's struggles within the frameworks of systemic racism and colonial history. His perspective carried weight precisely because of this empathy. However, reports of Prince Harry awkwardly pitching Meghan for voiceover work to Disney CEO Bob Iger at a film premiere proved to be a tipping point. For Noah, this wasn't just a cringeworthy anecdote. It was a historical punchline. He contrasted the geopolitics of historic royal marriages' strategic alliances that redrew maps and secured peace with the modern-day image of a descendant of warriors and emperors reduced to hustling for a cartoon sidekick role. From securing empires to, "Hey, my wife does a pretty good Timon impression," he mused. This commentary was devastating because it came from a place of disappointed insight, not inherent dislike. It signaled that the issue had transcended palace gossip or media bias. It was now about a perceived tragicomedy of diminished purpose, a trade of sovereign duty for influencer clout. Noah's shift was a bellwether, convincing many ambivalent observers that the criticism was not rooted in bigotry, but in a legitimate critique of choices. If American comics operated with the detachment of bemused cultural anthropologists, British comedians attacked with the visceral fury of the personally affronted. Their barbs carried the specific sting of national embarrassment and taxpayer resentment. Jimmy Carr, with his trademark machine gun delivery of offensive truths, sliced through Meghan's feminist branding. Meghan Markle is of course a lifelong feminist, which she's demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job in one sentence. He exposed the central contradiction that irked many. The champion of female independence, whose primary claim to global relevance was marriage to a man born into ultimate privilege, comedian and provocateur Simon Brodkin claimed to have undertaken a sincere review of their Netflix documentary, Harry and Meghan. His verdict was a public relations death sentence. "Before I watched it, I wasn't a fan. Now I've heard their side of the story, I hate them." This statement was catastrophic for the Sussex narrative. It suggested their magnum opus of self-explanation was so tone-deaf, so self-absorbed, that it acted as a repellent, converting neutrality into active disdain. Kelly Osbourne, never one for diplomatic language, voiced the blunt, populist sentiment that festered in British pubs and tabloids, labeling Harry a whining, complaining, "woe is me" person. This gave oxygen to the widespread perception of entitled grievance, framing his struggles not as trauma but as insufferable petulance. The critique then evolved from mere joke-telling into philosophical and psychological diagnosis. Bill Maher, on his show Real Time, pinpointed the cognitive dissonance that fueled the public's annoyance. They want it both ways. His comparison to the late Queen Elizabeth II's never complain, never explain ethos was a masterstroke of contrast. He framed the Sussexes not as tragic rebels but as creatures of a fragile generation, utterly unequipped for the silent fortitude that constitutes real dignity and duty. Meanwhile, Nikki Glaser bypassed complex sociopolitical analysis for a simpler, cruder, and for many, more resonant truth. She wants to be famous. She found the guy to make her the most famous in the world. In Glaser's reductive but potent reading, the entire epic saga, the romance, the wedding, the rift, the exit, was stripped of its romantic and ideological pretenses, and revealed as the world's most spectacular career advancement strategy. The most potent and enduring critiques, however, came not from live commentators but from the animated and puppet realms, where satire could operate with the freedom of caricature and the impunity of fiction. South Park dedicated an entire episode, The Worldwide Privacy Tour, which instantly became a cultural artifact. The depiction of the Prince and Princess of Canada desperately crisscrossing the globe to announce their desire for privacy, while a film crew documented their every complaint about being filmed, was a flawless satirical algorithm. It captured the absurd, self-consuming logic of the Sussex paradox with a clarity that real-life commentary could never achieve. Family Guy joined in with its signature cutaway gag style, mocking Harry's jarring transition from army officer and senior royal to influencer, humorously depicting him taking a $250,000 sponsored post for a questionable product. But it was the UK's revived spitting image that delivered the most savagely intimate and detailed roast. Through grotesque, exaggerated puppetry, it portrayed Meghan as a calculating, brand-obsessed narcissist, constantly pathologizing Harry's normal emotions and monetizing their every moment. One memorable scene had her teaching a soul food cooking class, where the recipe was placing a single artisan flour on a bag of store-bought crisps. A perfect, brutal metaphor for the perception of her Arkwell brand as superficial style over substance. Empty calories masquerading as profundity. Another sketch showed her snapping with terrifying rage at a hilariously incompetent Harry, who couldn't master basic household appliances, laying bare a relationship dynamic of control and exasperation that the mainstream press could only whisper about. The puppets, freed from the constraints of libel law and diplomatic decorum, acted as ID unleashed, screaming the quiet parts with latex-coated fury. This symphony of scorn, from Rock's logical missile to spitting images grotesque theater, succeeded because it tapped into a deep reservoir of cultural anxieties that extended far beyond Meghan Markle. The comedy served as a conduit for broader public grievances. 1. The authenticity crisis. In an age of curated Instagram lives and personal branding, the public has a heightened sensitivity to perceived fraud. The comics positioned Meghan as the ultimate brand manager, someone who spoke the language of vulnerability and liberation. While every action appeared meticulously calculated for commercial or reputational gain, the jokes exposed the seams in the performance. 2. The privilege paradox. There is perhaps no quicker way to alienate a modern audience than to be perceived as complaining from a position of extreme luxury. Harry and Meghan's discussions of pain and oppression, while likely real to them, were filtered through the prism of multi-million-dollar deals and California mansions. Comedians relentlessly highlighted this disconnect, reframing their struggle as a luxury brand of suffering. 3. The erosion of dignity. Bill Mayer's invocation of the Queen touched a nerve. In a chaotic, oversharing world, the old monarchical model of stoic silent duty held a nostalgic appeal. The Sussexes' global media tour, in contrast, felt undignified and transactional. Comedy framed their actions not as brave truth-telling but as an undignified laundry airing, a betrayal of a certain solemn mystique. 4. The content grift. In the era of the influencer, the public is increasingly wary of empty content masquerading as value. Meghan's lifestyle tips the jam, the pretzels. The mindful practices were portrayed by comedians as the emperor's new clothes, an obvious grift packaged in the aesthetics of wellness and philanthropy. The comedians, in essence, became the collective idea of a skeptical public. They said what ordinary people muttered at their televisions, but with better punchlines and wider reach. They didn't create the skepticism. They weaponized it, organized it, and amplified it into a dominant narrative. The result was a feedback loop. Each joke made the next one easier to tell. Each satire reinforced the perception that the target was legitimate, until the image of Meghan as a self-serving, incongruous, and ironically fame-obsessed figure solidified in the cultural cement. In conclusion, the transformation of Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, into the comedic villain of 2025 is a darkly instructive fable for the digital age. It is the story of a personal narrative that collapsed under the weight of its own internal contradictions. When placed under the unforgiving, funhouse mirror gaze of professional humorists, the court of comedy rendered its verdict not in a single ruling but in a cascade of sketches, monologues, and specials that collectively reshaped her public image. This process reveals the awesome power of satire as a social corrective, a messy, often cruel, but undeniably effective tool for enforcing cultural norms and punishing perceived hypocrisy. Whether this judgment was fair or monstrously unfair is a debate that will persist, but its efficacy is undeniable. For in our contemporary landscape, a perfectly crafted joke can travel faster and embed itself deeper than any official biography, and the collective laughter of millions can become the most resonant and most devastating review of all.